What's good, everybody, and welcome to an extra special edition of Hyperfocused. This one is a little bit longer than usual. We will be joined by Valentin from DAYONE in Berlin, awesome design studio that we've been working with together for the last couple of years, building a design system. Today, we're going to be jumping into just that, into design systems, but we're going to leave timestamps along the bottom of the video so you can either listen to us waffle on. I would highly recommend that because there are some pretty cool, interesting insights, or you can just jump from chapter to chapter. So, without further ado, let's jump straight into part one of design systems. What's good, everybody? And today we have an extra special guest with us. We're going to be talking about design systems, and I'm joined by Valentin today.
Hi, hello. Thanks for the invitation. Wow.
Absolute pleasure. So Valentin and I actually know each other from working on a longer project where we actually built an entire design system. We've been working together for the last, I'd say, 3 years now or so. And we've had quite a lot of learnings about design systems in their infancy, and design systems today, and the journey that we've been on together, also with a larger team as well. But we wanted to take the chance to actually give you guys some insights on some of those things that we've learned, and some of the knowledge that we've gained. So without further ado, firstly, I would like to ask Valentin to introduce himself.
Yeah, so as you already mentioned, my name is Valentin Schmid. I'm working as a UI designer for a service design studio, which is called DAYONE. The studio is located in Berlin. And yeah, as Paul already mentioned, we had this client for the past 3 years, and this is also very met, and this is very collected all of those learnings and those insights which we now want to share with you. And I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
You're working with you mentioned DAYONE, right?
Yes, exactly. So I'm a designer, so I'm part of DAYONE. And DAYONE and Hyperfocus, actually, those were the two agencies who collaborate together for this client. Cool.
So the first thing that I actually want to talk to you about is, can you remember like the first moment that we actually realized that we needed a design system?
Yeah, good question. To be honest, I think it was right at the beginning, I would say after a couple of weeks, where we first thought about that. And the reason why we did so is we were quite a small team, so especially the UI UX team was very small. And right from the beginning, we had this plan or this task that we should work on an app, but on design it for 2 platforms at the same time. So we had to do it for iOS and for Android simultaneously, so at the same time with a very small team. And on the other hand, we had a bigger development team, and they were, of course, they were waiting for our designs and for our concepts. And so we had to figure out how we can deliver on high quality, but still work fast enough so that we are not in the way of the developers and the project scope. Yeah, and so we were searching for ways to speed up our workflow, and during this process or this search, we also this idea of a design system popped up. So at the beginning it was actually just a UI kit. I think we will talk later about that in detail.
I mean, I think we're also talking about, design systems are a pretty known thing today. I mean, they've not reached their complete level of maturity. I think there's still a long way to go, and we see different strains and variants of design systems. But when we actually started, there was not really too much of a best practice, right? I think the only things that we were able to look at were from Apple and from Google, from particularly material design was something that influenced us quite a lot back in the day.
Yeah, it was definitely not as popular as it is nowadays, and but like what I really enjoy nowadays is that more and more design systems are actually open public, or like that everyone can visit them, and so that it's way easier to share knowledge. And I think this is also something which I hope that it will continue in the future. But yeah, a couple of years ago, so especially when we started working on the project, there was not that many design systems, especially not that many available to the public. So it was harder for us to find best practices and search for inspiration.
I think what was really good as well, I mean, we talk about design systems living in code. I mean, we're talking from a designer's perspective, but it's incredibly important to have this unity, a cross-functional team that understands each other. I think that's one of the secrets to a successful design system. And we realized that pretty quickly on. I think one of the reasons was that because we were working in a very lean environment where we were actually sat with developers. Traditionally, this is not so in agency structures. I think it's becoming a lot more apparent now because the word agile and lean actually become more of the vocabulary of a studio or of an agency. But then it was somewhat quite unique to actually be able to have those conversations with the developers, and this actually helped us to really find that we could do something together, share the knowledge. The knowledge transfer was very powerful, and to actually build something that worked.
Definitely, yes. I think this is also something which we learned in the beginning, that it's not just about us designers to collect insights, formulate guidelines. It's actually about collaborating with us as a design unit, but also with other departments, other disciplines, especially with the development team, and see how we can make our workflows easier, work more in a more consistent way, and speed up.
So today we've got a couple of examples that we're gonna be running through. The first example that we have with us is the Atlassian design system.
Yes, so the first example is Atlassian, and that's actually the name of the company, and we of course are talking about the design system. And the reason why we picked it, especially as a first example, is because in our opinion, it's in many ways a very good best practice. So it's doing a lot of things very good. It helped us a lot when we started working on the design system. So therefore I want to mention it, and I also want to give a very quick walkthrough and highlight some parts or some topics which we think turned out pretty well. So first of all, they have many digital products, and they have many platforms. So there's definitely a big need for having this single source of truth somewhere in a portal or in a platform, so that people can search for them and get to know the design system and especially the brand. And this is something which I found very interesting, and I think they solved it in a very nice way, is that they highlight not only component sets or a style guide, they also displayed or explained their brand values and, for example, their mission, their personality, their promise, everything which is very important from a brand perspective and should also be easy to access for employees. And they put it right at the beginning of the page, which I think is really nice. Apart from that, maybe something else which I find really nice or really easy to use is they have, of course, a lot of pages. They cover a lot of topics like colors, grids, iconography, illustrations, everything like that. But what I like especially is how they structure their pages. So, for example, they have this headline, and then they quickly explain in 1 or 2 sentences why they have it and what they think, how they want to apply this type or this topic within their products. And I think this is a very easy or easy accessible way to dive into these topics. So this is also what I like very much. And the last thing, and this is, not about the content, but how they structure the content, and especially how they solve the navigation. Because as you can see, they have like 3 different types of navigation. So at the beginning, let's try it out with content. You have this bar at the top, which is very popular. Then you have, as a second navigation, this left side where you can dive in to each topic. And then as a third option, because sometimes they have the reason why because they have so much content, they also have like this third section at the right side, which is something like a table of content. So it's very easy to navigate through this big platform. And I think they solved it in a very nice and transparent way.
So I think one question that I definitely have for you, I think we tend to, as designers, and obviously because we have also worked together for such a long time, we jump into terminology. All right, we kind of get a bit design nerdy on it. But for all the people who don't really, are not familiar with some of the terms that we're using, you mentioned a single source of truth. What do you actually mean by that?
Single source of truth, I think in the context of a design system, that's probably one of the most important terms. And it's also the main reason for many companies or teams why they come up with a design system. And what is like the idea behind a single source of truth is to store all of the information, visual guidelines, like everything which is important for product teams at one place, which is easy to access, which is like displayed in an easy to digest way. So it's easy to consume, easy to read, easy to share, and it's also easy to contribute knowledge to that. And this is what is usually called a single source of truth. And that's also something which we identified at the beginning of the project, that we need that very urgently.
Okay, I mean, I suppose that leads me onto the next question of why build? I mean, why build a design system in the first place? And when is it really time? I mean, let's say I've just started a small business. I'm looking at creating the building blocks for my design. So because I want consistency across everything, maybe I have various touch points, different types of displays that need to convey a consistency. So I'm starting to ask myself the questions. When is the right time to really kind of engage? When is it the right time to say, let's start building some kind of systematic approach to design?
Yeah. So first of all, I have to check all the things which you were already mentioning. Am I working on one specific digital product, or are there multiple ones? Is there just one platform? Am I just working on one website and that's it? Or are there any plans on have multiple touch points? Like I'm combining the website with an app, for example, or offering an iOS app and an Android app. So as soon as you have multiple products and multiple platforms, then I think it makes sense to start thinking about a design system, because as soon as there are multiple touch points, there is the need to share knowledge across those touch points, those products, and probably also those different teams, and to store them somewhere, and to also start a dialogue on how we as a team can still work in a consistent way, so that people will recognize the brand on all of those different touch points, no matter if it's an iOS app, an Android app, or just a website. So as soon as you have this case, then I think it definitely makes sense to start thinking about that. Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter about the size of the project or the size of the team. It's just about the requirements, you would say.
It's about the requirements. I would say it's also somehow connected to the size of your team, because if it's just you and me working on designs, then there's no need to set up a website so that we have like another place to store informations. If it's just the two of us, then we can just send around files. Then we have something like a Slack where we can exchange informations. But as soon as it's a bigger team, then I would say again, start thinking about a design system.
So for all those pessimists out there, would you ever say there's a time not to build a design system? Is there actually a bad moment where you'd say, let's not do this? Because the design system should give you a certain sense of freedom, right? It should help for you to be able to engage and be able to have something to focus on and say, get rid of all the noise and be like, okay, we can focus all our creativity in solving the problems in the best way using the tools at hand. So it helps to focus.
Yes, it helps to focus. It helps to structure stuff. But on the other hand, it also takes time. And I think this is something which should be taken into consideration. And so, for example, let's say we're working on a startup or like a product for a startup, a digital product. Usually we have a very tight schedule, so we have to deliver designs very fast. We're not even sure if the product idea will survive for the next 1 or 2 years. So we have to try out stuff, see if it works, and be fast, especially at the beginning. And in this case, I would be, I wouldn't be so sure about the design system and if it's the right answer, because as I said, it will take time, especially in the beginning. So you cannot fully focus on your product roadmap. You have to reserve, I don't know, a couple of hours, maybe even a couple of days for your design system.
But I would say also one thing that we talk about a lot is that, and it also reflects in approach to developing these things, is that it's never done, right? It is in somewhat a constant state of beta, because you have to be able to react to new requirements, to shifts in ideas about things, or even the company taking on a new direction, new staff, I don't know. There's so many things that come into play when building a design system.
Definitely, yes. I would even say that as soon as a design system is done, then you did something wrong. Because
it's true.
You should always ask for feedback and go with the products and see how the design system can support them, and how what changes the design system has to do step by step to guarantee that it still can support the product teams. And I think as soon as the design system is done, then product teams will sooner or later do not visit the design system anymore and will just do their own thing, because it's probably quite soon outdated.
Yeah, so this is definitely a learning, and something that we know is that it constantly needs to be fed, it constantly needs to be nurtured, and constantly needs to be developed, and it needs all hands on deck and all commitment from all sides to make sure that happens. It's a living, breathing entity in some way.
Yeah, and I would like also to add that it should be constantly be challenged, from all the product teams and for the designers and all from the developers. So I remember a lot of discussions which we had, especially with the developers, like how we should structure the design system, how we can change it so that it's also for them easy to use, so that they can also add their knowledge. And I think as soon as the discussion stops, then you have to quickly shift your perspective and try to pick up the conversation again. Yeah.
Cool. That leads me on to our next actual example. We want to talk a little bit about Microsoft's Fluent in the next example.
The reason why we picked Microsoft Fluent design system as a second example is, Yeah, multiple reasons. So first of all, we mentioned that it's very important to do it not alone with your design team. And the second reason is that, as we mentioned, sometimes, or especially for bigger companies and for bigger products, you will have to serve multiple platforms and multiple products. And that's something which Microsoft solved very well, or quite well, at least in our opinion. So I will share the website now. It's called Fluent Design System. It has again a very nice landing page. It really focuses on those different platforms which they all have to work on. So as you know, Microsoft has a lot of different products. Like for example, Microsoft PowerPoint, you can use it in your browser, on your iOS device, on your Android device, of course on the Windows platform, but you can also use it on Mac OS. So whatever they're working on, they usually have to take care that it works in each platform, and this is where they put their focus on. And I think this is very interesting again. So for example, when we start looking on the WebKit or on the web part of the website, and go to controls, then they have something like seems to be like something like a UI kit or a component library. It's called Fluent UI. And this is where they store all of the components and also add documentation to it. And what I would like to show as an example is something like a message bar or a message component. So I also picked this example because we in our project had a lot of discussion on how something like this has to look like, so that it follows all of the native guidelines, but at the same time gets recognized from the user that it's something which is linked to a specific brand. So that, for example, I'm using the product on a website, and then I'm switching over to, for example, an iOS app, so that it still feels familiar to me, for me. Mm-hmm. And I will show now something like a message bar, for example. So this is how they called it on Microsoft. I will scroll down, and here you can see they have listed all of the different states which their message bar can have. So default state, error state, we can also show all of them. They even integrated a toggle, so you can switch between several themes. So I can take a look on how this will look like on dark mode, for example. And the cool thing is, now since we know about everything about the message bars from the web platform, we can then jump to iOS, for example. It's a different OS, but of course I also have to display messages sometimes, and it's very easy for me to find like the same type of component, again with very detailed documentation, how to use it, how it's called, so that I can also find it in a UI kit or in a code library, and again it's listed all of the different states. I have this toggle, and of course have it also for Android, macOS, and Windows. And I find it very interesting, or find it actually pretty cool that they did it, and that they have like this platform where you can compare, for example, this message component and see how I as a designer have to apply it for each platform or each OS.
Nice. And we also have another example, which I think is, we talked about this a little bit before, or off camera as well. And I think they have a really, really interesting approach of how they melt pixels and the real world somewhat together. So yeah, that's the DHL design system.
Yes, they also have a design system. As you can see, they also have
which DHL would not be, I think, to the regular viewer, the place to find a design system, right?
Yes. We were like very surprised, actually, in a positive way, when they released their design system, because we didn't expect that they are coming up with such a nice product or such a nice platform. And the reason why we picked it as a best practice, and it's also something which Paul already mentioned, is because they combined or somehow tried to combine the digital with the analog world, and to put the guidelines next to each other, so that it's easy for us as a designers to compare them and to see how we should apply our designs on, for example, a screen or a print product like a poster. And like the thing which we are talking right now, it's called measurement section. It's titled also with it's also titled layout system. And yeah, it's again a landing page where they explain all of their fixed spacings. So as probably every design system, they have like a fixed set of spacing values. And as you can see in this example, is that they have again a lot of touch points, so you can get in touch with the company not only with a poster or with a package which is delivered to you. You can also meet the company on your Apple Watch, for example, which is very interesting. And yeah, they also brought some examples, some which are linked to print products, some of them are digital. Yeah, they've invented, or they've called it something like base unit. And what I want to show right now is this section, which I find very interesting. And here you can see the different values. So on digital, of course, they're working with pixels, and like the base unit is described with 18 pixels. But, or in addition to that, they also offer specs for print. So you can also find this base unit in all of the print products. And in this case, it's described as 28 millimeters. And as you can see in the examples below there, that they're not only writing about that, they are actually using it in their products. Yeah, I think that's a very interesting example that the design system, it's not only tied to digital products, you can also add specs or guidelines for print products, for example.
I absolutely love it. I think it's a genius way of approaching it, because sometimes you want these two worlds to be somewhat close to each other, because you're looking at creating something that's coherent, creating something that feels solid as one. But to be able to translate between the two worlds can be very difficult, especially talking to somebody who does not have experience with digital, to somebody who has a bit more of a traditional, I suppose, media background. This is a really cool way to merge those two things together.
Definitely, yeah.
And I think talking about cool, actually the next example that we're going to run through is one of my favorites, I would say. I mean, so far we've gone quite nerdy into some kind of deep techie versions of design systems. But on the other hand, there's also a very light-hearted way of being able to build design systems. Design systems should also be fun, in my opinion, as well. And I think the next example from Duolingo is a great example of that.
Yes, yeah, Duolingo, like the app, which you probably know from your app store. So it's a very handy and easy to use app to learn languages. I guess they were one of the first apps who solved it in such a nice way. And apart from having a great product and also nice looking product, I really enjoy using the app. They also delivered a on-point design system. They're calling it Duolingo brand. So again, it's not only about components, it's also about their identity, their brand, and how it should be delivered to customers. And two things which we find very interesting is this writing section and also the illustration section. So writing section, maybe before we dive into that, we maybe have to mention that since, I don't know, a couple of years, design systems doesn't only include components or design specs. It's also quite popular nowadays to also include something like a tone of voice guide for design systems. So to not only store design values, but also which type of tone, which type of voice you want to use as a brand in your products. Yeah, and they also did that with Duolingo. They have actually a very extensive tone of voice section. And I want to highlight some of the chapters. So again, they introduced the brand and why they're doing it and how they're doing it.
The golden circle. Good old golden circle.
Exactly. But apart from that, they also edited something like a brand personality, which we again probably know already from multiple products. But what I find very interesting and also actually a bit funny is they edited easy-to-use example on how Duolingo should be perceived from a customer. So they had this example. So for example, if Duolingo would be a celebrity, it would be this guy. If it would be a type of transport, it would be the Vespa. If it would be a particular song, then they picked a song which they think would match with the brand. So this is, I really like those examples, and I think it makes them easy for them to explain the brand especially to new employees. Yes, and second example, something which we already mentioned, is the voice guidelines and the tone guidelines. I think they're very easy to read and easy to understand. They have, of course, sections where they give best practice examples and also how they do not want to use language or some words. They really go into detail in this section and describe it in detail, which I think makes sense because the app itself is mainly about language and reading and listening. So I guess it's very important for them to cover this topic.
I think this is something that we talk about a lot as well, is how important. I think there's the blurring gaps between brand and experience. I think this is something that we try and champion as well a lot, is that brand is definitely not just your logo. Brand is the entire experience, the conversation that the product or service is engaging with you in, and it makes perfect sense. And I'd love to see how platforms like this or products like this are really blurring the gaps and merging the two things together and creating a complete overall experience.
Definitely, yes. What else we want to show? Maybe I will quickly mention this Duo section, something which I didn't know yet. So they have this character, this bird, as a mascot, and they write like a specific tone of voice guide just for this fellow because it plays a big role within the app. So I found that very interesting and also funny. And apart from tone of voice guidelines, we also want to quickly dive into the illustration sections.
I found this very cool. This is very cool. Yeah.
They didn't only write guidelines on how to write stuff and how to use components. They also wrote a very easy to understand guideline on how to use their illustrations and how to come up with characters, how to apply something like a shading. And they have like this, as you can see, they have these images and very short descriptions next to it. So they talk about the rhythm so that characters doesn't get boring to the user, and that there is like a wide variety of characters and shapes. They also write about simplicity, so they want to use as less shapes as possible. So, for example, 6 shapes. Of course, that's too much, too less. It's not enough. But 30 shapes, on the other hand, it's too detailed. So they would recommend something like 15 shapes, which I find a very interesting approach on standardizing something like an illustration. Of course, they have the objects in space section. They talk about shadows, shading, And not only did they cover so much different aspects of the illustrations, I also like how they transport this knowledge to the user or to us as a designer. Because after I scrolled through this page, I really have a good feeling or a good estimation on how I should draw the next illustration for Duolingo. So it works as a very nice onboarding just via scrolling through this page.
Yeah. No, I mean I love it. I mean, definitely we took some, or we've approached it in a similar way on the design system that we've done. But I think Duolingo definitely takes it to another level. It's really, and don't mistake simplicity with ease. It certainly is not easy to break everything down to its complete bare minimum and still make it exciting and fun to use. But I think, we always talk about as well, limiting palettes and limiting choices actually open up even more choices that you can make because you're going in the right direction. You're able to, again, focus on those things, and you can build 1,000 characters on brand instead of 200 off brand and 3 or 4 on brand, and I think that's the beauty of breaking something like this down to its bare bones. All right, okay. So biggest challenges. We're moving on onto the next one. And again, this is also something that I really like, a bit close to my heart, I suppose, being British. But we're going to jump into to the Guardian and talk about what were the biggest challenges for the newspaper, The Guardian, and building their design system.
Yeah. Maybe before we jump right into the case, the best practice or the website, maybe some words why we again picked this particular example.
Yeah,
sure. What we will see in a second, or what Guardian did, is they built like a one-pager, and so they guide you through their design and how they apply it, especially how they structure the landing page, how they talk about or think about components. And the first thing is cool that they come up with a landing page just for this topic. So I think this alone is very cool of them. But the other thing is how they did it. So I have the feeling, again, just as a designer who is not working for The Guardian, just by scrolling through the page, or after I'm done with scrolling through the page, I have the feeling that I can now start working on The Guardian. And not only that I have the knowledge now, I also know why everything looks like it is, and
I mean, it's very intuitive.
Behind it.
One thing that we've talked about this in other videos about traditional versus digital, but in this case, there is a wealth of knowledge from traditional media, especially when it comes to laying out newspapers, that is so similar and crosses over so well to building websites.
Yeah. I think with these words, I will now show the website or this landing page. So first of all, this is not a design system. They call it as a digital style guide, I would assume. And it's more mentioned to be something like an extensive onboarding, or to give like insights into their design guidelines. And as you can see on the first view part, they already added it like a call to action or a link to jump right to the color palette, which I would assume is an indicator that this is like the most requested feature or the most requested section, which I find again very interesting. And once you start scrolling, you will they will start with the landing page and with the grid and like how they structure stuff and what sections they have on the page. So for example, they have those components, they have of course modular story cards. They give you like a very quick intro on how they name stuff. This is just naming alone is a very big topic, so that you find like the right terminology and the right names for certain components or certain areas of the app. So they will just cover this topic with this slide in a very easy to understand way. They highlight all of the different card sizes. I would assume for desktop and mobile breakpoints. They have different, like not only in the, like they don't have just responsive card sizes, they also have different types of cards, some with photos, some without them. Yeah, article types. Yeah, and this just goes on and on. They also dive into the grid and explain the grid. And what I will now want to do is jump right into the color palette, because this is what they think is most important, and this is also a section which I enjoy the most. And the reason for that is because they explain in this landing page, in this section, which color they are using for which type of content. So as you can see there, they have like lifestyle section, news section, opinion section, and they're displaying how they're using the colors for the different sections. And they also have this chart, again, where they have not only color, but a dedicated color palette for all of this section. And especially this section was a very big inspiration for our color page as well, because it's informative. So I get all of my specs and the color values, but I also get a great idea on how to use which colors for which section of the app. So I really like that. They have that for topics within their website or the newspaper, and they also have it for their brand and highlight colors, other sections. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I think it's a very intuitive. It's a very simple, great example of how to onboard somebody who maybe is not familiar with design systems, or I mean, you called it a style guide, but just to get a very quick entry, I think it's perfect. It's almost design systems for dummies. Somewhat. It's just a very, very easy and nice, eloquent way of presenting the work. All right, okay. I think we're almost up with looking at these bigger examples, but for the people out there who are thinking about, okay, starting a design system, getting going, getting a team together, realizing that there's a need for a design system inside of their organization, do you have 3 top tips that you could talk about as a takeaway?
3 core tips. I could probably add, 50 core tips, but I think one topic which is very interesting or very important is how you want to collaborate within your team. So collaboration it's very important, since design system is based on that. So the foundation, as we mentioned in the beginning, should be collaboration, should be working together on this platform, together on these guidelines. And so I would recommend to start right from the beginning on bringing as many people or as many disciplines throughout the team or throughout the product team on this table, and collect opinions and learnings. Because the more disciplines are on the table, the better. So especially when it comes to adding this development team or this side from a development perspective, because we started with just us as a designer, because we had to save time and speed up our workflow, but we learned quite fast that doesn't add so much value if we just store or display our fancy designs in the platform. Makes way more sense if we add the development knowledge right next to it and formulate those guidelines together with them.
Sure. Yeah.
And the more perspectives, or the more perspectives we get on a design system, the better. So today it's not only the design or the development team, which is part of the design system. It's also, for example, a copywriter, which we mentioned already, so which shows to also offer tone of voice specs. But it's also about project managers, also even stakeholders who should be able to add their perspective and should be able to contribute to the design system.
Cool. Is that 3 tips there for you? That's
I think this is about the communication.
A long-winded answer, but
or the collaboration. Yeah,
so I like it. Yeah, I mean, it's. Yeah. I mean, I maybe can add to it as well. We talked about a constant state of beta. Remember, this thing is never done. It's an evolving thing. So keep working on it. Keep evolving. And the other thing I would say is always question what you're doing. You know, challenge. And if you've got the right people around the table, you're ready to go into this for the long haul, and you're willing to ask the difficult questions, then you've got like a good building block, I think, for at least the essence or the motivation to be able to create a good design system.
Yeah, and don't turn into a design police.
Yeah, that's very, very, very important. Yes, for sure. Okay, we have one last example, and I think we both see this as very, very good best practice for an alternative way of looking at design systems, and quite possibly the future, I would say, of how design systems can play a role within organizations or within bigger organizations across multiple teams.
Yes, and the company, or actually the design department, which you just mentioned, is from Spotify. Mm-hmm. So as we all know, together with Airbnb and some other companies, they were some of the first companies who started working on the design system. So it's actually, what they have already is quite old, so they collected a lot of learnings already. And this is why it's so important for us to also take a look on their roadmap, on their learnings, because they're actually ahead of us. So they already know the challenges which we maybe face in the next years. So this is why we have them on our radar. Unfortunately, they do not have a public version of their design system available, so we can only browse through their articles where they write about the design system. And one article which we found particularly interesting, and which I will show right now, is reimagining design systems at Spotify. Yeah, so they're writing about their history about design systems, and I will go through that and maybe add some comments. So first of all, as you can see here, this is where they started a couple of years ago. They did a very big redesign around 2013 or 14, which is called Painted Black. And then they started with their first design system, which they called Glue. And as you can see already, they already had, for example, apps. Of course, they also had a desktop version, so there was already a big need for a design system. The thing what happened after that is, as they wrote in 2018, the design department grew a lot. So in 2018, they already had 200 designers, 2,000 engineers in 45 different platforms. 45 different platforms, okay. And some of them they were already mentioning here. So, of course, they still have the apps, they still have the desktop version, but since then you can also access your Spotify playlist on your TV, inside your car, on your watch, and even on your fridge. So they have so many touch points now that it got a bit, crowded. And what happened then is that apart from their official design system, other design teams within Spotify created their own design system. So apart from Glue, there was now Solar, Tape, Creator Tape, and even a library or design system which was tackling design tokens. Yeah, this was again in 2018. And what they did then, and this is what we find very interesting, is they tried to consolidate it again, so to bring it again in one structure and into one overarching platform. But what they also wrote in this article is that they learned from this experience, and they don't want to restrict like this, what their teams did, so that they come up with own design systems, like in theory, or this is actually a good thing, so that they have like this idea to collect their own guidelines. So, and what they plan how to solve that is with a framework. It's actually a design system framework called Encore. And I will now scroll to the bottom. So as you can see, there's still this foundation, which probably could be found in the glue. So they still keep this kind of foundation, but they will add, on top of the foundation, they will now add dedicated design systems for the web platforms, for example, for their mobile platforms, all of the apps, and have this free or this constellation as a base. And then, and this is what's so new, they now offer like in an official way that teams can now add their local version or their local design systems on top of that. So for example, they were mentioning in this article, there is like a new app, Spotify for Artists. Maybe in this app there is a different type of navigation. Maybe they have to use the brand in a slightly different way. Maybe they also have a different target audience, and therefore they have to change some stuff. So there's a need to document all of those additional guidelines somewhere, but still connected to the mobile design system and also like this overarching part which they call foundation. And this is something which we found very interesting, and I think we both believe that this could be also relevant for other big companies which are probably also having the same problem, that more and more teams coming up with their own design system.
For sure, definitely. I think it's also a great example of a future vision and how design systems, especially, have matured from our humble beginnings of trying to figure out what a design system is, and all the stuff that we went through to get to where we got to, and all the people involved, from all the developers, project managers, the other designers as well, and everybody for kind of coming together and believing in creating something. I think you have to have that definite vision to make something like this happen, because it's not easy. It's a long road, but it's a road that brings a lot of benefits and brings teams together. I think one thing that we didn't touch too much on is culture. But I think a design system can also bring a strong sense of unity, because you can actually see and reference what you're actually doing. And sometimes what we talk about, other designers understand. What developers talk about, other developers understand. But there's not always this kind of commonality where everybody's speaking the same language. And a design system is all about finding a common tone, a common language, a common way of being able to speak to each other, whether that's visual or through code. So, that was a long one, but very, very interesting and very, very insightful version of Hyperfocus. I'd just like to thank you, Valentin, for joining us. It's been really, really a lot of fun, and I hope the viewers have found this interesting and be able to take anything or take something away from it. Anything that you'd like to say before we depart?
Just thanks again for the invitation. So it was very nice talking with you about this topic. And as you already said, if you have if you from the audience have any comments or different perspectives, or if you want to add something which we for example forgot mentioning, then please add it in the comments, or I would say write Hyperfocus on Instagram. whatever you prefer.
Very good. Very
Thanks
good.
for having me.
Absolute pleasure. And don't forget, you can also see more of Valentin and Valentin's work and the whole team over at DAYONE as well. So I'll leave the links in the comments below so you can check out what those guys are doing. Fantastic agency based in Berlin, doing some really, really cool stuff. So also big shout out to those guys. And yeah, once again, thank you, Valentin, for joining us. And as always, we will see you in the next one.